What's good, y'all? It's your boy HB, final round. I want to talk about the hands down style of fighting. Now, usually I kind of make these videos about upcoming matchups or opinions on fighters and where they're trajecting. But, I do a little bit of training, especially with newbies and novices. So, I like to share, what information I have to help people out, help improve in the sport. And it should also be noted, this doesn't just apply to boxing. This applies to any form of striking. MMA striking, Muay Thai, kickboxing, sport karate, whatever the case may be. Because at the end of the day, the principles are still going to remain the same. It's a common denominator across all forms of striking when it comes to distance, timing, rhythm, stuff like that. Those are some of the core principles of just striking in general. Now, obviously, you're going to have to kind of make subtle adjustments to cater to the techniques of whatever sport you're competing in. But let's get into it. Fight with your hands down. It's a very unorthodox way of fighting. Now, obviously, it's nothing new. We've seen it all the way back from Muhammad Ali and probably before that up until today across all realms of striking. You think of MMA, Michael Venom Page, Dominic Cruz, TJ Dillashaw, Anderson Silva. In boxing, Roy Jones at times would fight with his hands down. I just mentioned him earlier, Muhammad Ali, Prince Nassim Hamed. It's nothing new, right? Pernell Whitaker to a certain extent. It's nothing new, but it's definitely unorthodox. You don't see most boxers get in the ring and start, starting with their hands down or fighting throughout the fight with their hands down. Now, obviously, I definitely put a warning label. If you're new, do not fight with your hands down. I'll give you a blueprint to how you kind of graduate to that. Unless you're just extraordinarily gifted and you got a lot of range, I don't recommend this. Even then, I don't recommend it. It's something you gotta graduate to. Like I said, unless you're like one of those fucking prodigies, like one of those fucking kids that get on a piano and they start ripping Mozart at like 5 years old. Unless you're one of those type of motherfuckers, I don't recommend going into the ring with your hands down. But this is why we're making this video. It's kind of to explain the method to the madness. And that's the thing. Because it's an unorthodox way of fighting, we have to establish this, okay? If you're going to break the rules, okay, in anything in general, you first, and get away with it, you first must understand the rules and the fundamentals, right? So if you're going to do unorthodox things in the ring, okay, unorthodox techniques or style, whether that be lead with the right hand, lead with the left hook, switching up your stance in the middle of a fight, shit like that, fighting with your hands down, you better understand the fundamentals first. That doesn't mean you have to master the technique of the fundamentals, but you better understand it so you know how to get away with doing unorthodox things. And as we've seen some of the greatest fighters, some of the top fighters throughout history do unorthodox things, or just be purely unorthodox to begin with. And what's the benefit of being unorthodox in fighting? And if it comes to any sport to where it's beneficial to be unorthodox, it's fighting, because it makes you very unpredictable. And when you get to a professional level, it makes you very difficult to train for. There's not going to be many sparring partners that can simulate, say somebody like a Roy Jones or Prince Nassim Hamed. It's risky, but you're in a risky fucking sport. So it's just like, be all in or be all out. I mean, fighting with your hands down at the end of the day, I mean, if you know what you're doing and you're confident in your technique and your methodology in doing it, then just commit to it. Because either way, at the end of the day, you can get knocked out with your hands up, hands down, right? It's the punch you don't see coming, and we've seen fighters all the time get knocked the fuck out with their guard up. So it's very equivalent to extreme sports. Sometimes the only way to learn is the hard way. But anyways, I digress. Now, obviously, I want to give a few examples. I'm going to go off the training tracks again. I apologize. So here's the thing. All right, like I said, in order to get away with breaking the rules, you first must understand the rules. So think about this, completely unrelated, but I laugh politically when people are like, we need to tax the rich, we need to raise taxes on the wealthy, and you know, that's the way to go. And I laugh when I hear that. Why? Because wealthy people understand the tax code. And if they don't understand the tax code, they hire people who do, right? And because they understand the tax code, they're able to move their money in ways to where they can avoid being taxed, okay? Whether it be legally or illegally, they will find the loopholes in order to protect their money. But they only can do that by having a great understanding of the tax codes. Another example, a fictitious example, well, I shouldn't say fictitious because there are people who can pull off pretty crazy heists. But I love the movie Ocean's 11, right? Or Ocean 11, I don't know which one it is, but except for the last one. The last one fucking sucked with the females. You know, no offense to the fucking feminists, but that movie blew. That's neither here or there, but that's the way my mind works. So I'm sorry, I apologize. I'll get to my point. But, you know, in that movie, you got a group of guys, you know, they kind of get together and, you know, they pull off these crazy heists, you know, whether it be a casino being the target, a very wealthy person, or a bank, shit like that. They don't just go running up in the fucking casino with guns blazing and say, hey, this is a stick-up, give me all your fucking money. No, they don't do that. It's not going to work, all right? Even if it did, it'd probably get caught later on. What they do is they study the casino, all the ins and outs. They know the schedules of all the employees. They understand how the security systems work, how the security vault works. They know all the ins and outs about the target they're trying to pull the heist off of. They know everything about it. And because they know everything about it, they're able to find these little ways and these loopholes to get away with pulling the heist off. And it's the same thing in any form of striking. But let's just talk about boxing for now. If you're going to fight with your hands down, you have to know what you're doing. You have to know the fundamentals. So there's one obviously glaring con to fighting with your hands down, and that's you get caught, you're getting fucked up. There's no way about it. You get caught with a punch, there's no insurance. You know, you don't have your gloves up to kind of deflect the shot or kind of dilute the power of the punch. You get caught clean with a good punch that's flush, you're going night-night. Kind of like Anderson Silva against Chris Weidman, you know. But once again, think about it this way. Anderson Silva is one of the greatest fighters that ever graced the octagon, okay? And he fought so many fights with his hands down, and even though he got caught once, he only got caught once, right? And I would say that even though he got fucked up that one time by Chris Weidman, his career is a testament to how effective his style was. And yes, he played a risky game and he got caught eventually, but he's won more than he's lost. So be all in or be out. Be all out. You know, it doesn't matter what your style or your technique is. It's a dangerous sport. Accept it. You know. But that's the only glaringly obvious con when you kind of figure out how to fight with your hands down. For me, it's kind of my base style. You know, I do a lot of different shit. I switch in and out to different things, but I like to predominantly fight with my hands down throughout a fight. So here's the first thing, one of the first benefits. You can see better. You can see a lot better, okay? And what do I mean by that? You can see what punches are coming at you a lot easier than when you have your guard up. Regardless of whether it's MMA, Muay Thai, boxing, but especially boxing where you have these big bulky gloves, a lot of times it blocks your vision. They call it the earmuffs, right? It can block your vision. And once again, if you don't see what's coming at you and you get caught with a punch, that's usually the knockout punch. So when you got your guard up and you know you're covering up, it's very difficult to see what's coming at you. Okay, and that kind of can prevent you from moving your head more efficiently. It was funny because when I started fighting with my hands down, I started experimenting with it and sparring. My head movement exponentially increased. It just got better. It wasn't even something that I worked at, you know, in training, like working the slip bag or anything like that. I didn't work the movements, but it was crazy to see how better my head movement got. I was slipping, ducking, dodging. I never rolled punches, and I started rolling punches. And why? Because you can see better. It's already hard to see when you got a good boxer across from you, even if his guard is up. It's still kind of hard to see those crisp punches, you know. But you know, when your guard's down, you see everything, and you can react better. Another benefit of fighting with your hands down is you become more relaxed, just naturally. You conserve a lot of energy. It doesn't improve your cardio, but you're way more efficient in how you use your energy. Even if you train with your guard up your whole lifetime, you go through a 12-round fucking fight, your arms are gonna get tired. But when you hold your hands down like that, you know, your arms don't get as tired, if at all. I came into the sport, you know, coming out of the University of Central Florida playing football. I was a lot more bulkier, a lot more ripped and muscular. So when I kind of put my guard up, I kind of naturally got tense. You know, my biceps would flex. And that's one of the things, man. You get in that ring, you got to learn how to relax. It seems counterintuitive, but it's the best thing you can do. And is learning how to relax in there at whatever cost it is, because you will fight better. You'll be more fluent. You'll be able to counter quicker. You won't expend as much energy mentally and physically. So I was a lot more relaxed when I fought with my hands down. Another benefit is your opponent can't see where your punches are coming from. When your hands are down at your waist, you don't know where those punches are coming from, okay? Like I said earlier, it's already hard to see when you have an opponent across from you that has good crisp technique, like a good tight left hook. It's hard to see that motherfucker coming, even if your opponent's holding a high guard. Imagine if it's not even up here, you know? So it's a lot more easy for your opponent to see where your shit is coming from if his guard is up and it's all up here. But when it's down to my waist, you don't know when it's coming. You can't get a gauge or an understanding of the angles, especially if you like looping hooks. And that's why you see a lot of guys like Prince Nassim or Roy Jones. They had these leaping hooks and they would fuck people up with them. And part of that was because you did not know where the fuck it was coming from. It was coming from the ground. It was coming from outer space. And it was devastating. So it's harder for your opponent to see your punches coming. Another thing that I noticed is it's a little bit more difficult for your opponent to gauge distance, okay? And distance is one of the most important things in striking, because understanding where you're at in the ring and where your opponent's at and positioning, because if you don't understand distance, essentially you're kind of fighting blind, as weird as that sounds, but you are. You know, you think about Andre Ward. One of the things Andre Ward likes to do, he likes to paw with his jab. You'll see him paw, and he'll kind of try and figure out where his opponent is. And usually, a measuring stick for him, he uses his opponent's lead hand to kind of measure where he's at in the ring. Okay, he's pawing, he's pawing, he's pawing. A lot of fighters do that. That's not a technique that's uncommon, but usually what fighters aim for when they're kind of pawing at their opponent, or even if they're not pawing and they're just jabbing and they're trying to figure out where their opponent is, they usually aim for the gloves or the lead hand, you know, something of the sort. So when your hands are down, there's nothing to paw, okay? And your opponent essentially has to step within mid-range to close range in order to kind of secure the distance, which puts him in danger of getting countered. Which leads me to my next point. It's a great way to bait your opponent in. There's many ways to bait your opponent, right? But for now, let's just focus on having your hands down. It's such an effective way to bait your opponent. It's like if you go fishing, you have a tackle box and you got multiple lures in there. And you got that one fucking lure that never lets you down, that always catches that big fish. And for me, this is what the hands down fighting style is to me. It's my favorite lure. It's my favorite source of bait. This is a sport with very egoic people. It's a sport with individuals who are very prideful. When you're in front of them with your fucking hands down, guys get offended. as weird as that may sound, you know. Now a disciplined boxer will see past that, right? But even I've seen high-level professional boxers fall victim to this. And there's a famous clip of Muhammad Ali in the corner, and he's just slipping all these punches, and he has no guard up. And this guy literally threw like a 10-punch combination and missed every punch. And it was just hilarious because this is a professional boxer. All he needed to do was, you know, throw punches to Muhammad Ali's body, and on top of that, Muhammad Ali's whole torso was squared up. He was in the corner. He had nowhere to go, and this professional heavyweight fighter did nothing but throw wasteful punches to the head. And that's the primitive part of the mind that traps, that kind of baits opponents in. There's that ego, like, oh motherfucker, you're gonna hold your goddamn hands down against me, I'll show you. And sometimes it works, right? Sometimes it doesn't. But usually when you see a guy with his hands down and he gets caught with a punch, it's usually a guy who does it for a brief moment. He gets cocky, and you know, or maybe he's trying to act like he got caught with a punch and he's trying to act like it didn't hurt, and then he gets caught again. But that's not the case with fighters who fight with their hands down consistently, because they know what they're doing. And you know, fighters, they get in their ego starts to come out when they see you with your hands down. You're basically, to them, you're basically saying you're not a threat. You can't hurt me. You can't catch me. It's like a mouse or a rat, and they see a piece of cheese and the trap behind it. And some of these fucking mouses and rats are smart enough to figure out, like, hey, don't fuck with that rat trap, you know, that cheese, you know, there's a trap behind it. Believe it or not, they're that smart. But sometimes, even if they're that smart, they still fall victim to their instincts. They see the food right in front of them, and they just can't help but grab it and take it, and then snap. You know, the trap goes in. And it's the same thing with the hands down fighting style. It's a great bait. Instinctually, a lot of guys fall victim to it. And, you know, obviously, you know, I would say if you're across from a guy who's fighting with his hands down consistently, aim for the body, please. Aim for the body. Don't fall for the trick. Because it's a great way to suck your opponent in and then counter him as he's coming in, and using his his aggression against him and his momentum against him. So it's a great form of bait. Another thing is, if depending on the way you hold your hands down, and if you have great head movement, you can protect all the vital organs on your body, okay? Or all the pressure points like the solar plex, the kidneys, the liver. When you got both of your hands down, and if you have it in a certain position to where you can protect those vital organs, you essentially become impenetrable. And if you have good head movement to complement that, you become untouchable in a lot of ways. That's the problem with having that high guard sometimes. If you got a smart fighter who knows what they're doing, they're going to target your body, and they're going to pull those hands down eventually, and they're going to set you up. It's easy. One of the first things I do when I get out there first round is quick jab to the body, especially with guys who have that high guard. And I love it because it's so easy. It's just right there for the taking, and eventually I sucker them to pulling their guard down, and then boom, come with a left hook or whatever the case may be. So, think about Mayweather. Even though he doesn't fight with both hands down, he does fight with one of his hands down. And why? It's to protect the body. And then obviously he's angled to where the right side of his body's not exposed, and he keeps his right guard up to protect his chin, and the shoulder to protect his left side of the chin. So it's a nice way. It's very good if you kind of figure out to kind of shore up your defense, upstairs and downstairs. Another thing is, this one's kind of like a cherry on top. Man, when you fight with your hands down and you're making your opponent miss and you're countering him, you start to gain a certain amount of swagger, okay, and momentum mentally throughout the fight. There's just something about making your opponent miss with your hands down and making them look silly and making it look easy and making it almost seem like this whole thing's a joke. There's something about that. It just builds your confidence. It boosts your ego. And at the end of the day, I don't care what anybody says, you need a big ego to compete in this sport if you want to be successful. And you got to kind of be very arrogant and cocky and confident. Because if you don't believe in yourself, then who the fuck is? And this is a sport where you better believe in yourself, or you're going to get fucking hurt. So, it's nice when you start building that momentum and you're moving your head around, you're ducking, you're dodging, you're pulling back, he can't touch you. It's just something natural that starts clicking to where you start gaining a lot of confidence, and that fucks with your opponent mentally, and it boosts your ego mentally. And we all know, I'm not going to be one of those people that say it's 80% mental and 20% physical. I don't know. But all I know, the mental aspect is real, and it's very important. I've seen guys who weren't so confident, very talented, very good technique, very gifted, but weren't so confident, and they would get out there and, when it was go time, and they would fold like freaking lawn chairs. Then I met guys who weren't so freaking talented physically or athletically, didn't have the greatest punching technique, but they believed in themselves. They carried themselves with a certain presence, and they had confidence in their technique and their style, and they would go out there and they were world beaters. So it's important to have that. And when you're fighting with your hands down, and if you're being effective doing it, you're going to be sharp. You're going to be sharp. And there may be one more thing. It's slipping my mind at the time. Another pro. Well, I think it's slipping my mind for now. But with that being said, let's get into what's the blueprint for kind of developing the style. Now, I will say this. I was lucky enough my first gym, to train with a lot of different levels of fighters. And it was kind of a fitness / like competitive gym, right? And it was a nice combination, because it wasn't like a fitness gym to where you're not learning anything, you're just hitting a bag and you're just doing cardio work, right? You were actually learning how to box, but you didn't have to compete. But it was encouraged, it was a gym where you were going to learn how to fucking fight, right? You were going to learn the skills of boxing, but you didn't have to take it like seriously. And it was a nice combination because it was almost very class oriented, and everybody would work with everybody. And one of the things we stressed was like, look, we're not in here when we spar, we don't try to kill each other. Like we work on control. And that way you focus more on developing your technique and skill rather than relying on your physicality and aggression. And you really have to do that when you're working with people who just want to learn how to get in shape and learn how to actually box, not compete. You have to control yourself. And, you know, I know a lot of times in martial arts, especially like jiu-jitsu, you know, some guys hate rolling with white belts, you know, like, oh, God, or some people hate sparring with lower level novices, like, I don't feel like sparring with this person. They're not on my level. This is a waste of time. I'm not getting anything out of this. And that's so unfortunate because, you know, the beauty about sparring lower level fighters or novices is you can take the time to kind of play around with different techniques, play around with different styles, and play around with those unorthodox things that you may want to try to work at. And i.e. example, fighting with your hands down. When I'm working with a novice, I know this guy can't hurt me, or this girl. I know they're not gonna knock me out. I know there's not gonna be a high risk of getting caught with something, or I know there's not gonna be severe consequences when messing around with some of these techniques I'm trying to learn. And it's the perfect opportunity for you to kind of go in there, not kill the guy, you know, kill the other guy and let him learn or let her learn, but also work some new shit, work some stuff that you wouldn't necessarily try against the better sparring partner, you know, that might be a little bit more risky, because if you get caught slipping, you know, you might get hurt or KO'd or, you know, stunned. You know, and that's the beautiful thing with training with all different levels. You know, with the novices, you can really kind of play around and figure out what you can and what you can't do. And it's still honest. At the end of the day, it's still honest. You're getting real resistance and pushback. You know, you will get hit, but it's not going to be so devastating to where you can't recover. I'm going to be, and I was lucky to be at a gym like that, because I went to a lot of gyms, and you know, it's hard. Some of them aren't even like class, most of them aren't class oriented. It's like you get in there, it's like every man for himself unless you're on a team. And you know, when you're on a team, you know, you kind of got a killer's row, and everybody's trying to get better, everybody's got an ego, everybody's trying to prove themselves. So it's a little bit harder to kind of play around and test different things in sparring. So if you can, find a gym to where you do a lot of partner drills, to where you work with people of all levels, to where everybody's controlled and not trying to fucking kill each other. Because that is where you learn how, even if it's not unorthodox techniques, you know, that's where you experiment, you know. And as you get better and you see what works, what doesn't, the positioning, the timing of the technique or the style, then you start to graduate to intermediate, you know, doing it to competitors that are around your level. Then you start taking it in, you know, into hard sparring with good sparring partners. Then you graduate to the actual competition if you want to compete. So that's kind of the blueprint to how to get there. If you can't find a gym like that, where you kind of do a lot of partner drills and it's controlled and you're working with all levels, then I would say look for novice boxers at your gym, right? And ask them if they want to spar. You know, obviously don't go in there and kill them and fuck them up and completely demoralize them, because, you know, in a sense, if they do accept, they're doing you a favor. But, you know, find some novice guys, work with them. As a result, they get to improve and get better, and they don't have to take a lot of punishment. That's the thing. You know, you can completely hit your opponent without hurting them. So, you know, if you're in a guy at your gym and you find somebody at a lower level and you know they're trying to compete and spar, invite them in the ring, man, and be controlled as much as you can and start playing around with those different techniques and styles, or what we're talking about now, fighting with your hands down. And like I said, that's the way to go. And if you can't find any novice guys that want to work with you, or maybe they're just not available at the gym, then unfortunately the only way to learn is the hard way, and that's by taking the risk and you know, with the killer row of sparring partners that you may have at your gym. Unfortunately, you know, this is a risky sport, and like I said earlier, be all in or be all out. And it's just like skateboarders or motocross, you know, those motocross bike riders who do those tricks and flip the fucking bikes in the air and shit. You know, they don't get to that point without breaking some bones, you know, and scraping their bodies up and, you know, falling and eating shit. You know, in order to land those big tricks, they gotta fall, man, and they gotta eat shit, and they gotta take risk, and that's just the way it is. You know, if you can find an environment that can kind of supersede that, and you can avoid taking that extra punishment, obviously that's the way to go. But not everybody's going to have the same resources. So if it does come down to it and you can't really find a sparring partner to work with or be controlled, and to where there's not going to be too many consequences for playing around and experimenting with different techniques, at the end of the day, you just got to learn the hard fucking way. But that's up to you. But like I said, you're in a fucking fight anyway, so you might as well go in there and throw everything you got and commit to whatever you're doing. But look, man, comment below. I want to know what you think about the hands down fighting style. What you think works, what you think doesn't, why fighters do it, if it's effective, if you know any more consequences than the one I listed, and any more pros. Like I said, put them in the comment section below. Like the video, subscribe, man. New channel, I'm trying to build it up and coming boxer, train at Wildcard Gym, Freddie Roach's gym. So I'm excited for the future, man. I love boxing. I love talking fighting, not just boxing, MMA as well. And I'm hoping to, you know, share this with other people, man. I know this isn't fucking perfect shit, you know, perfect editing and, you know, highlight clips and videos, but maybe I'll get there one day. But at the end of the day, this is me. I'm keeping it real. It's not edited. I'm just talking shit, man. So get at me. Stay safe this weekend. Much love, y'all. Peace.